G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute, joined today by old man host himself, Algared. How you doing, buddy?
I'm alive. It's
Yeah.
always for phrase these days. Always a good way to be.
I'm barely awake. I got woken up in the middle of the night by a bunch of messages about the ship showdown. So I'll probably do a little episode on that a little later. Unfortunately, I don't have time to do that with you this morning because you've got to go off to school.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I've said that 3 times.
Oh, shit. Okay, well then you can do it with me afterwards. Shit, I am not listening then. See, that shows you how much I'm not awake. Anyway, right. So what are we doing? We are doing our thoughts on this one over here. I honestly thought you were going to school. Man, I am so deaf today.
Yeah,
right.
That's next week.
Right, okay. I've been told by a few people that this is a good episode. We'll see.
Well, just looking at that, based on what I keep reading in the monthly reports, they keep going over and reiterating and fine-tuning the interactions of the AI.
It reminds me of a bad set from the Star Trek of the 60s with those rocks in the background like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I got linked a couple of photos of the Zeus, so apparently the Zeus is in it as well, so. Alright. Just double checking something in the background before we get started.
Make sure you got the filter off so we don't...
Yes, that's what I'm checking, because otherwise, no, it's off. Good. Alright.
Otherwise, the sound gets muted and we have to start again.
Yes, and now we don't have to start again. Alright, here we go.
There's a lot you can say about the upcoming Pyro system. It's dangerous, obviously. It's lawless, certainly. But it's not all just chaos and carnage completely. It's also people just trying to make their living where they can in a place that's challenging and pretty different from the adjacent Stanton system. From repairing your neighbor's generator to supporting the nearby farmers, there's much you can do to be a social and upstanding citizen for Pyro's prosperity.
It's almost like he got a haircut for this episode. Social behavior. And he got...
He's trying to be an upstanding citizen.
Yeah, exactly. I think he was talking about himself in that whole intro, not the episode, but anyway.
Now, trying to be an upstanding citizen.
Yeah.
And this is the opening scene we get.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me of, Star Wars and the horrible furry critters, playing the skulls.
Yes.
So the planets of Pyro are different from Stanton in the fact that they all have to deal with the Pyro star system being at the end of its life cycle, emitting huge amounts of solar flare radiation, and we have to consider what is that actually doing to each planet. Naturally, Pyro 1, closest to...
But there's the Zeus. That is very nice. I think you can see what I was telling you earlier about the sneak peek video. So I think it's actually different. And I think it might not be the one from the sneak peek. We might need to reevaluate that sneak peek image.
So,
yeah. All right.
The sun is going to be the heaviest influence of the solar flare firing off. So how do those people live? But the people furthest away from the star on Pyro 6 are going to have the least amount of radiation, but it's also going to be super cold at the same time. How do those people live instead?
In Stanton, you have huge landing zones, which are very protected, very safe, lots of security. In Pyro, there's no such thing. You're very exposed to the danger. Everything is a lot more spread out. People aren't huddled into landing zones. They have the entirety of the system to roam across.
There are no central sources of power in the Pyro star system. It's all decentralized, and each outpost has its own different identity and what it means for you as a player as you go to these different places. Should you be aligned with one faction, you can visit these locations. Should you align with another faction, you can go to these other locations instead.
You've got a lot more to do there. So instead of going down, doing a mission, flying away again, you can go down, do a mission, do another mission, do a third mission, and then go to another out.
I was just noticing there are a lot of new faces, Algared, so they put new heads into the system. I don't know if you picked up on that. Yeah.
And again, being social.
Yeah.
Post on the same planet, do some missions there. You have a much more involved experience.
So let's look at some of the places you'll be visiting. So farmsteads are a small slice of life within the Pyro star system to get you introduced to what it's like to live there.
Landing complete.
There are places to gather harvestables, places to complete your missions, and ultimately your first introduction to how people live in the Pyro star system.
Did you notice the prisoner just casually in the cage, like checking his mobileglass, like, oh yeah, yes guys, please send help, I'm stuck.
He's going through reading his books, or he was trying to be social.
As normal
He's on
prisoner
social
does.
media.
Yeah. Send help. Enjoying my time in prison. It's great. Yeah.
Farms are probably one of my favorite ones, just because I really like the vibe of them.
Is the closest thing to a home feeling I think you'll find in Pyro. You feel like there's a smaller community living here.
There's a lot more fields of crops, there's a lot more greenhouses. For the lawless ones, we've got these like grub farm greenhouses, which are really cool as well. They tend to be in a lot more open, plain-like areas, big fields of crops around them.
There is things to do, there's things to harvest, but it's also just the vegetation that kind of sits on a lot of the desolate landscapes that we have in Pyro. Give you a little bit of this mini feeling of like a little oasis.
There's one in particular on Pyro 2 that's really nice and has this really nice vibe, that kind of like lazy windmill circling in the breeze on a plain that's just like almost featureless apart from these few buildings on it. That really gives especially at sunset, like really gives an amazing vibe of like, these people live in the ass end of nowhere, but are really trying to do their best to survive.
There are going to be some goods that are only grown in Pyro because of its unique star system that can be shipped back to Stanton.
We have a whole bunch of new mission types that you'll be able to do there. Then they're more geared around repairing pieces of machinery. We have what we call charge drain technology coming over from Squadron, which enables you to transfer an electrical charge from one component to another.
That is very interesting. I wonder how much that fits into like a part of the engineering system, but moving it out obviously into buildings from ships rather.
Yeah. Oh, it was interesting also. They've got these. One of the things I know you've talked about, and we've talked about on our streams, is farming and expanding our farming. And at the moment, you've only really got farming in the Endeavour and those small little hubs on Stanton. But here you've actually got fields that they're doing that you can harvest. And
yeah, maybe it shows that agriculture is limited and only available on the Endeavour because it's. But you think there'd be more of like maybe something about, I don't know, we'll see, like transferring plants or something like that. Maybe they'll just have special cargo containers. We'll have to wait and see as time goes on.
Yep.
So you can like jumpstart a generator, for example. There's scope for much more gathering type of missions, like going out into the field, collecting crops. There's a big focus on non-combat at a place like a farm.
Next, let's talk about scrapyards. Scrapyards are one of the few locations within the Pyro star system where you can actually service your ship that is not on space stations or LEOs.
We'll have more scrap in a scrapyard, which makes a lot of sense, but we've got the towering cranes with derelict spaceships in there, the skeletons of spaceships being pulled apart.
And we can see that there is a certain order to things where things get disassembled and moved around, and where your aircrafts are getting refueled and repaired. There will be little shops as well to kind of get you on the way for your journey.
That's your Mos Eisley, Algared, the little thing there.
And we've got your ships are also getting taken apart and stripped, and
True.
Got these large landing pits in all the scrapyards that are unique to the scrapyards, which are the big sort of sunken pits for repairing, rearming, refueling. They kind of bring that kind of unique, okay, this is a scrapyard because I know that there's a landing pit here, and they're the only types of outposts that have those.
Landing complete.
Here, you're able to interact with Chrysler services, refuel your ship, repair your ship, even rearm your ship as well. In addition to servicing your ship, you can also service the scrapyard itself. You've got to use your charge and drain tools to be able to repair pipes, repair canisters, any faults in machinery, etc.
It's very much about taking things apart and organizing them and shipping them off again.
But unlike the landing zones within the Stanton system, there is no air traffic controller. There is nobody to filter out where you can go. You simply choose a parking space, you land there, you service your ship, and you must fly out.
The new mission type that we have is salvaging, but in first person. So you don't need to be in a ship. It will be something that you can do on foot. So salvaging all the various panels which have turned up at the scrapyards in order to process them. Another piece of non-combat gameplay at scrapyards might be repairing machinery. We have a system which uses the resource network and engages it.
So if I put 2 and 2 together, you just said, that means that they're going to be repairing on foot. So our first repair missions in the game are on foot.
Yep.
Before they're in a ship.
Yeah, and repairing systems in the...
Yeah. I guess
like
that's...
the closest we got to that so far.
Well, I was going to say, isn't that what the engineering gameplay is as well? It's repairing. So yeah, it makes sense, actually, if you think it through, compared to what we saw at CitizenCon last year.
Like the closest we've got to any sort of that repair mission previously in Stanton was going to the relay stations and turning them back on. But this is different in that you're turning machinery on, you're repairing machinery, you're repairing pipes, you're doing mundane stuff. And I could even see on those scrapyards, you repair stuff. You have to land, you can't repair because you've got to go fix that pipe. But
well, I think that kind of what you described
chains of missions.
It shows the kind of 2 parts to repair. You've got the actual fixing of components. Like if I just put it back in a ship, you've got the repairing the components, but you've also got the construction of new parts. So the outside of a ship and the inside. And if you put that to base building, it's the same thing. It would be repairing the components and parts on the inside, plus the actual structure of the base on the outside. So that's the latter part we're going to see, the outside stuff, the external stuff.
But at the moment, we're just seeing that.
Yeah.
That first touch.
But it shows you the room system. It's all interconnected, whether it's on a ship or it's in a base or whatever. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
In missions, so you will be able to, for example, if there's a broken piece of machinery, you will be able to find a working piece of machinery, rip components and fuses and parts out of that, apply it to the broken one, and make that run instead.
It's literally the engineering system, but in a different room, essentially. Okay, not surprised when you put 2 and 2 together. It makes a lot of sense. What you and I always talk about, essentially the sharing of what's the word I'm looking for, but it's totally eluding me. But sharing of in-play game systems is what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And it's like, you tie that in with the stuff they pulled across. They literally said they pulled across from Squadron with a power transfer. Yep. You repair it, and then you add power to it to power it up again. And you can see the way engineering is developing and moving forward.
Yep. And I reckon you'll see puzzles too based around that. Ones where you take something down and redo it a certain way to make it more efficient or something like that. Or you've got to, I could just see a lot of puzzles coming out of that. Like doing it in a certain way. Yeah.
At the absolute base bit of puzzles, you've got a machine that's broken. You look at the machine, you find, it's this bit that's broken. Now I've got to find the bit to replace it. So even at that point, you've got that type of that, and then you've got the more advanced puzzles where you're shifting things around to make them more efficient or otherwise. So yeah.
All right.
But of course, you've broken the first machine by doing that.
Without any landing zones in the Pyro Star system, we're using scrapyards to be able to help service your ships so that you can navigate to other locations on the planet, as well as get back up into space as well. But the largest concentration of player activity is going to be happening at the trade posts. The trade posts are where the player is going to be dealing with trade and commodity, organizing themselves between different groups in order to purchase different food, water, ship weapons, ship components, armor, grenades, med pens, whatever, you name it, it can be found and sold here.
They focus quite heavily on hauling, delivery, and shuttling goods around.
Trade posts are organized by several different factions within the Pyro Star system. At these different locations, you might find different inventory, different perks, different goods. So if you're aligned with Citizens for Prosperity, you might visit locations such as Jackson Swap on Pyro 2, or Conard View on Pyro 6. Conard View is in a very cold location that's very inhospitable, but people still need to be able to service and trade and do things around this planet. You can find different goods, different resources there, all being sold at this location. As Conard View is sheltered within a crater, it is also a safer location away from other headhunter gangs nearby, so you've got fewer people competing for your wares or trying to pirate from you either. Jackson Swamp is sheltered between these two different cliff bluffs, offering them lots of protection. And through there we went for a spaghetti western style main thoroughfare with lots of different landing pads around. And because it's well established, it's got some nice defensive measures so that it can't be immediately attacked by any rogue factions within Pyro.
We see in Jackson Swamp, it's a hard environment that these people live in. It's not an easy living.
Visually, it echoes like the rest of the sort of art style that we call the sort of frontier art style.
If we look at the buildings, we see that there's a lot of stucco elements, there's a lot of makeshift little knickknacks that people have gathered from around the Pyro system. It's a mixture of that hard scrabble life and people trying to make the best of what they have and repairing things over and over again and like replacing things that break. You can see that the way that people are living there, it's very makeshift. Rooms were built to have a certain purpose, but have lost that purpose many years ago.
There's still that sort of decorative, artisanal, craftsman-like elements in there as well, with the rough weave rugs and things like that. So we're trying to really like push that homesteading vibe, in complete opposition to things like the space stations and, you know, Microtech, which up to now has been this very corporate, lots of metal, lots of angles, lots of edges, lots of sci-fi. This is supposed to soften off all those corners.
You as a player can land whatever size ship you have, purchase whatever size ship components and ship weapons you might want to have. You can visit the local warehouse or order any potential things that you might need to have, commodities, food, etc. Where anybody needs to be able to get something, purchase it, collect it. This is where all the players are going to be collecting.
I get this vibe, Algared, that there's just, it's playing into the limited resources. The even the real nicer areas have you know, kind of like highly traveled and highly, you know, they've been looked after and maintained with the limited resources they have. And I really like that. What's the word I'm looking for? Lived in feel. No, yeah, lived in aesthetic, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's, you know, you get those display homes and they're like, basically like no one would live there because there's no shit in them. But this has got too much shit in it because they have to live with it and they collect anything of value because it's so limited and
They're hoarders because they have to be, because things break, so you've got
necessity.
To have spares and stuff, Yeah.
But maybe you align yourself with headhunters and you visit locations like Gonner's Deal and Golem Rivier. Gonner's Deal is a smaller outlaw trade post perched in Pyro 4's massive crater. It's there as a stopgap between Pyro 3 and Pyro 6 because there is not much landmass around Pyro 5. Pyro 5 is a gas giant. And yet you need to have a midway drop-off to get from Pyro 3 over to Pyro 6 on the far side, because Pyro star system is far larger than Stanton. Golem Rivier is one of those sleazy towns which is just full of seedy people, absolutely taken over by the headhunters. They've butchered everything, they've changed how they want things to work. Trade posts are possibly selling slave pods, you can find other illegal goods. But it's just a central hub of like sleaziness.
Don't judge them.
it is still built out of this minimal things that are laying around. It's very a hodgepodge of different things that come together. What makes Golem Rivier different is that now a tornado just went through the entire place. It is absolute chaos. Bits and bobs are laying around, things have rusted, and you will find mattresses of where people have been sleeping in the weirdest corners. We can see that the people that have been living in the space have really outlived this location a little bit.
So kind of the opposite of the ones I was saying before, where they were highly maintained. This is just like things have been let go.
Oh, it's almost as if the headhunters have just taken it over, and that's why it looks so smashed.
Yeah, but they don't have the same teams involved. Like all the farms were planned out and stuff like that. So everything was planned and organized, even with limited resources. This is just a gang that's come in and taken over, and again, everything's just been let go.
And they've just left it as it is. My thing I always wonder about things like this is if you bring enough supplies and that, do these areas actually, would they eventually evolve? And I can't see them doing that, but I do hope that eventually we'll see that type of thing in our settlements.
Yeah, it might be restricted to player housing. We'll have to see as things go on. All right.
The idea is that these are once prosperous outposts that have since been basically home invaded by the bad guys and taken over completely. So we use a lot of more fire and lots of spiked kind of cladding and rusty metal elements just to give that kind of, I hesitate to say Mad Max, but kind of that more apocalyptic vibe, I suppose.
Jackson Swap, even though it is very improvised, it has a certain structure underneath it. And Golden Riviera this structure is nearly gone. It is really chaos, anarchy that this place really embodies.
The players coming to our
Hey, look, it's Old Man Hurston in a cage.
locations should feel like they are encountering a whole new frontier where people feel a little bit on edge and they're curious about you, but they're also hesitant to meet you at the same time. There is no law, there is no jurisdiction, there is no protection. There is just you and people trying to get by and live their lives.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, hopefully that there's a whole lot more to Pyro than just being a jerk and destroying everything you see and touch. That while all the systemic gameplay systems of Stanton can be found there, Pyro arrives with a few new ones of its own. And that at launch, there are two primary factions that currently dominate much of Pyro's planetside. And your choice of allegiance will determine much about where you'll go and what you'll do with your time there. And if you were asking yourself, hey, do these two factions ever fight? Well, I'd say come back in 2 weeks to see not only how much they don't like each other, but how they both have to contend with the ongoing presence of Xenothreat as their neighbors. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you. And we'll see you all here next week with a special Ship Showdown showcase look back at the work of superstar Gavin Rothery. He's so good.
Check there's no, there's nothing else. Right. Well, Algared, that was different. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean it kind of goes into details of things that I'm trying to think the last time they went around and told us all the little location details of Stanton in detail like that. I don't know if we've ever had a video like that, but yeah.
I'd like to see some of those features of things like farms and some of those elements actually find their way into the Stanton system. So some of that gameplay setup,
I think they will
work its way into Stanton because it works both ways.
Yep.
There is stuff in Stanton that will break down and needs repairing. It's easier to repair it.
Well, remember, we got those farms at Microtech and stuff like that, so yeah. They're definitely coming. It's just interesting to see that there's a little bit more involved, and it also showed a bit of the lore and the backstory and stuff like that. And I think that's actually going to go deeper than that too, especially like dealing with the solar flare is going to be a really big thing, I think, in that system. Not just flying around one's coming, but like, you know, does the closer planets that have worse radiation, do they have to, you know, are they all on the other side of the planet to get away from the sun? And you get where I'm going with this. Like,
do they, when they know there's a solar flare coming, do they power down or take fuses out? And if they don't take the fuse out, does that mean they've got to replace it?
Exactly.
Do you have to harvest your crops before the flare hits to get what food you can before they're wrecked?
Well, considering how frequently it goes off, I don't think so. But I was going to say, do they grow them inside or something like that? You know, things like
well,
that.
you saw a lot of the plants were growing outside. So are they plants that have been specially, you know, engineered so they do grow better in that environment? Probably. But yeah, it does raise a lot of questions, and certainly I think gives a lot of hope to what we'll see as a lot of non-com. Because there seems to be a lot more non-combat stuff than pew-pew.
Which is good.
Which is good, because it was like... And it's not that the combat is bad, it's just that it's nice to see stuff that doesn't involve...
Something different, yeah.
Involve that, so yeah.
All right, then, what would you like to hear from people in the comments below, Algared?
What elements would you like to see from Pyro transferred into Stanton?
Yeah, I think for me, were you happy with those locations? Is Pyro somewhere that you're more interested in explore than Stanton, or is Stanton better for you? I think it's going to be interesting because I think there are elements in both systems people are going to want to see, and it's good to kind of have that yin to the yang. Would be my kind of comment on my own comment. I know that sounds stupid, but yeah. I'm answering my own questions now. I'm that tired. Right, with that then, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and thank you to everyone that went extra mile on Patreon at the end of the video. All right, with that said then, he's been Old Man Hurston.
He's been Execute, and we're out of here. Take care.
See you, citizens.